Hey everybody, welcome to Highland and Haver in the Mix on the Road, brought to you from the beautiful Roxy Theater in downtown Bremerton, Washington. We're here with our good friend, local movie producer, director, everything, Scott Breitbarth.
You name it, he does it.
Thank you guys.
So thanks for being on the show. Just a couple of notes about the Roxy, because they're kind of letting us do this and sponsoring this episode. The Roxy will be celebrating its 80th birthday this year, anniversary. So there's going to be a ton of stuff that they're going to be doing, events to be named, kicking off over Memorial Day weekend, which is actually the 80th anniversary during that weekend. So stay tuned to the show. We'll keep you posted on events and let you know what's going on. Also, the Roxy is going to be part of the Kids Upgrade Give, April 20th.
Right.
So we'll publish the link when that's available. So a great way to give to a wonderful charity. The Roxy's been here for 80 years. Hopefully it'll be here for 80 more plus. So thanks to the Roxy, and thanks to you guys for joining us here, and Scott especially for making the trek.
Oh, absolutely. This is actually my first time seeing a movie here, and yeah, think about the Roxy. It is beautiful. Please. It is a wonderful little theater, and they let you have your own butter on your popcorn. Get to pick as much as you want.
Or as little as you want.
Or as little.
And beer and wine.
Yes. So this is in the mix.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we've done some a little bit of everything that they have here wine wise. So I've done the red.
You didn't have to do anything of this segment.
I didn't have to mix anything.
Just
so
ask for a pour.
there are no ingredients or directions in the show notes.
How do we do this? Oh, man, I'm not used to
Well, which one do you have?
I guess we'll just
So
read the labels.
all right.
Yes.
Well,
This is in French, so I'm going to butcher this.
So you've got a different.
I've got the white, and it's La Vieille Fermée. And I am not a huge white wine drinker, but this one is extremely enjoyable. And I love the fact that you can come, have a glass of wine, have a beer. They've got a great selection, and then see a great film.
Yeah.
So what more do you need?
I've got the red. This is Cuvée Jean Paul.
Well done.
Vaucluse Rouge. I probably butchered something
Rouge,
in there, but it's French wine. I think yours is French as well.
I assume so.
And Scott's kind of split the difference.
I'm the
So he's
middleman.
in the middle.
Yes. So I have a rosé. It's Cuvée Jean Paul from 2019. Casconne Rosé. It's French, and obviously I speak French.
They teach you that at USC?
Yes, they start you off in German, and then when you eventually get into France,
So you need to learn the German film purity laws of 1720, right?
Unfortunately.
Right. Yes.
Well, we want to kick off the Oscar season with this episode, and that's why we wanted to bring in a professional like Scott to talk a little bit about the film that we saw today, and talk a little bit about some of our favorite films that are up for awards. It's a varied selection of films out there this year. A lot of diversity.
Yes.
And we saw Judas and the Black Messiah today, and it's up
This
for...
is pretty good, by the way. This is not...
Still on the alcohol thing, huh? You'd think this was a segment about booze.
I know, right?
Yes.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Anyway, I digress.
Let's start with Greg. What do you think of the film, Judas and the Black Messiah? It's up for 6 awards. I'll list off. It's up for Best Picture, first and foremost. 2 Best Performances by an actor in a supporting role. No lead actor nomination. Best Original Song. I really did enjoy the soundtrack. I thought that was
sick.
Yeah. Best Original Screenplay, and then Best Cinematography. So we want Scott to weigh in on that for sure. But Greg, why don't you start?
Well, I'll start with a couple of things. First of all, I think this is going to play well in the Academy Awards because of it's one of those everything is old is new again from a message perspective. You'll see, it's about an FBI informant infiltrating the Black Panther Party in Chicago and the things that happen as a result of that. So we won't go too much into the plot because we just want to kind of touch on this lightly. But one thing that the nominations show me is that they viewed this as an ensemble. Otherwise, they could have submitted either of the 2 main players in the film, probably for lead actor, but they chose to do both as supporting actors. And I think this, along with Trial of Chicago 7 and some of these other ones you're seeing that focus on ensemble and a recognition by the filmmakers that maybe there's not a lead. maybe the group carries the film. So that's the one thing that stuck out with me from as far as the nominations go. I thought it's a heavy film, for sure. I thought it was definitely enjoyable. The pace was varied, I would say. At points, it seemed like it was kind of flat. At some points, it seemed they built some good suspense, some good drama. I mean, it was enjoyable. So I would recommend you see it if you've got a chance. What about you? You want to go to Matt, and then we'll go to the expert.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's a
so much pressure.
The nomination's a nod to I think a lot of the civil unrest that we've seen in recent days. It's going to resonate with a lot of people for that reason. There's obviously race relations heavily involved, and it's a heavy film. And having been here a week or so ago and seen The Father, which is about an elderly man played by Anthony Hopkins, who's losing his mind to dementia, I thought that was heavy. Like Greg said, there's humor, there's highs, there's lows, but all in all, not the feel-good movie of the year, but an important one, I think, and one that you sit and you go, especially as a younger person, this happened in America. This happened in Chicago. It's still pretty rough to, and as someone who has lived a life that has been untouched by that type of unrest, this took place, and not that long ago, 50, 60 years ago. So definitely worth seeing. Prepare yourself.
Yes.
And I'll toss it over to Scott for. I like your take on the cinematography for sure.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Since there's a nod.
Yeah, so this is basically the Fred Hampton story, but it's not told from the perspective of Fred Hampton. It is an ensemble story. It's told from basically the informant, the Judas in this case, and there also is a relationship between him and the FBI agent that goes between manipulative to almost very personal. It also tells the story of Fred Hampton's lover, who actually, if you know, I'm not going to spoil anything, but she's also a very essential character to how this story plays out, especially into the ending. To me, the biggest thing that this movie does is it does not go out of its way to lionize its players. One of the biggest risks you can make with a movie like this is that you're going to actually make it look like you are trying to worship these characters. You are going to portray them in a light that actually more mirrors the kind of visuals that you would expect from what the Black Panthers were trying to project themselves visually, especially in their media and how they put themselves out there in their speeches. I think that's a big reason why this film got a nomination for cinematography, was because the cinematography blends. It's meant to be seamless. You're supposed to go through the scenes without being like, oh, this is where the director wants me to look. Oh, this is where the director wants me to look. And I think actually what this movie suffers from, unfortunately, as a result, is that the tone kind of wavers back and forth. And honestly, it stays pretty flat and then has these big, huge blips. I call it the Mount St. Helens effect, because you'll just have these little tremors, and then boom, you hit a low one, and then finally at the very end, there's your explosion. That's the thing that everyone, it's the biggest thing that everything is going to be leading up to, and if you know the story, you already know what that is. If you've seen Trial of the Chicago 7, which is another movie that's been nominated for this year, Fred Hampton also makes an appearance in that movie, so we kind of have this Dunkirk Darkest Hour situation where we have two different stories almost side by side with each other, and we actually get to see a trial with the Chicago 7 versus everything in Fred Hampton's life that led up to what actually happened. Yeah, I think that for me, if I can make a big change, if this movie, what this movie really needed, if that was the direction it was going to go into, was a very solid editor. There were times when there would be scenes that would pop up that are that the way they designed it was actually supposed to be supporting other events that you were seeing in the story, but it can be a little jarring. Maybe the jarring was on purpose, but for me, I think in order for this movie to hit home, it really needed a lot more emotional notes, and also I think needed a more consistent narrative. They had this beautiful idea. I'll try to make it quick. Sorry. They have this beautiful idea where they actually have narration happening through the actual interview of the mole. We'll call him that. I think if they had actually used that as a good framing device, you probably would have throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't see it. Almost bookended the film.
Exactly.
Appeared, because that's seeing him in that setting after all this had taken place, wondering what had happened to him since. You would have those a little bit more emotional tones.
Precisely, and I think it actually would have given it much more of an Amadeus tone, because you could have had the story of the unreliable narrator. You could have taken some more liberties with the story if you needed to, especially dramatic, and the biggest obstacle you would have from that point on would probably just be perspective.
Right. It was interesting that when, like you said, there wasn't a lead actor necessarily, and there also wasn't a good guy, bad guy. They, I think they did a good job of showing that there was a lot of kind of blame to go around on both sides, but without and didn't lionize one side or the other. Maybe that's why it seemed a little flat.
Yeah.
You weren't necessarily cheering for one side or the other.
Exactly.
The morality of it was a little muddled, but that seems to be probably the actual historical story.
Yeah,
played out that way.
I think you're finding a lot lately, though, antagonists in film are not personified, if you know what I mean. So take, I mean, the best example I can find with that was WandaVision on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Obviously not part of the Oscar, discussion, but there was no antagonist other than grief. It was like an emotion or a journey or something was the actual antagonist. And I think that's something that I've seen a little bit more of lately, and I don't know if that's something that is going to be more common.
Well, we definitely saw that with what is arguably the best movie of the year, but we'll get to that. Just my personal opinion. You don't have to take my word for it, but yeah, people seem to be delving a lot more into the individual this year, and I think a lot of that has to do with COVID.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of stories that are really attractive right now. People actually wrestling with themselves. The biggest obstacle you have is the one in the reflection over there. And you could definitely see a good chunk of that in this movie. The mole struggling with, okay, am I doing the right thing? Am I part of the group? Where does my heart truly lie? And I can't spoil anymore, but it definitely is.
And those decisions that are forced. Some forced, some not, and again, it's like another movie that I'm gonna claim might be the best picture of the year that we'll get into, and maybe it's the same one. I don't know.
We'll see.
One last thing on this though. What do you think about soundtrack? I thought the soundtrack was very good. I think it had some, pun intended, Black Panther vibes.
Yeah.
Yes. My favorite part of the film, honestly, I think the casting was really well done. Without ruining too much, you will see historical footage at the end of the actual players, and I think they cast extremely well. But I love the music, and I love the vehicles.
Oh God, yes!
The greatest late '60s, early '70s.
I told him in the theater, I missed those leather seats.
Yes. Yeah,
so nice.
So
and no
featured
headrest.
Prominently.
No
headrest.
You had to sit up.
Visible.
Is that what happened? Did we just start leaning back in our cars, and that's how all this started happening? World War America. It must be. The soundtrack it has a very minimal jive vibe, very blaxploitation. If you like those tones, flutes. I think it might have been even a saxophone at some point too.
Yeah, there was some jazz.
Yeah, and the soundtrack I think is ultimately what saves a lot of those flat moments that you see in the film. It just kind of takes you over and doesn't guide you, but it just sits there because
it fills in some of the gaps.
Segue.
They've established what the scene is before the music goes. Okay, we're here.
Yeah,
it's good.
So it's up for Best Picture of the Year. We've got 8 nominees. So Judas and the Black Messiah, which we've been discussing, The Father, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, The Trial of Chicago 7, which we also referenced earlier, tells part of the same story, and last but not least, Mank, with 10 nominations, which generally, in the past... 10 nominations, and usually the film with the highest number of nominations will traditionally receive the Best Picture nod, but Mank is, and this is something that Greg and I previewed a couple of months ago at the WWCA theater with our friend Dan Estes, and we both enjoyed it. It's a movie about Hollywood, which Hollywood loves.
Always.
It's black and white, which is unique.
And it had some political undertones that mirrored what was going on.
Control and manipulation of the media.
Yeah,
We're seeing these. So there's some pretty heavy themes this year. You've got a woman recovering from sexual assault. You have an Asian family moving to the Midwest. You have obviously African American issues in the 60s and 70s. You have mental illness. You have someone losing their sense of hearing. Are there any just feel-good films this year? They're all thinkers.
This is one of the things that I want to talk to you about, Scott.
Yeah.
As someone who understands how movies made or have been, because I assume as part of your education you have film history and things like that.
Yeah. So
just a touch.
Back in we're talking about best picture nominees back in the 80s, and you'd have some of these kind of almost rom-com-ish films, a lot more lightweight films than you have lately. It's really taken a turn towards these serious issue-filled films, and I don't know, what do you, have you noticed that? Or is that just me?
Yeah, well, I also think of the 80s as the decade of the epics. That's when you had Chariots of Fire, Last Emperor, Amadeus. There were historical biopics, but they were also very theatrical, and they took on the size and scale that everybody wanted in their movies when postmodern films started, and you had Star Wars and Jaws to deal with. You had to be bigger to have your movies sell. You had to have something unique. I think there have been a good chunk of heavy-handed films in every decade, though. If you really think of that. The 90s, you had Schindler's List, The English Patient. I would say Saving Private Ryan is a very heavy hitter, too, but we know what happened with that. 2000s. Crash, that was a pretty heavy-handed film, maybe a little too much.
Well, obviously, these aren't the only films that have been made.
Yeah.
You have streaming, Netflix involved, Amazon involved now. So
that might be a big thing too.
They're being made. Is it a product of the time? Are we all just that depressed? We need to turn to these subjects and kind of look inward and at
Well, I think the Oscars. What the Oscars is dealing with right now is they have a lot now that social media has really become a part of the show experience, especially the award show experience, where there's a lot more weight to the kinds of pieces of art that win, whether it's the Grammys with songs or film or TV. There's a line where you want to satisfy everybody and recognize, what is the significant film that is addressing either something in your industry or something that's happening in the world today. So, if you look down the list, like we just did, you have Mank, that's the Hollywood movie. You have Judas, that's the African American movie. You have the Me Too movie, which is, Promising. Thank you, sir. Everything. You have the acting movie, which is The Father.
Right. The immigration experience.
Everything. They're trying to be a collective.
Yeah.
If they can't do it with their hosts, they're going to do it with their movies.
Good point.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and then it leaves little for argument.
Yeah.
When.
Well, something else we discussed is there's so much overlap. You've got a lot of best actors, best actresses in best pictures. You have all the cinematography, all these, and best director. They're all encapsulated within the same kind of 8 to 10 films. Obviously, these aren't the only films that have been made this year, but these are the ones the Academy chose to highlight. So that's something that Greg and I are going to continue to explore, and we're going to start posting some of our picks and predictions and things, the ones we'd like to see. But it's a lot to take in, I think, because of the variety. How do you choose? How do you vote on this?
Well, unfortunately, the Oscars isn't a variety show, pun intended. It really is. If you want to win awards, this is the rule. You have to campaign. I learned an important lesson about the Oscars when I was at school. My professor, Michael Pizer, my producing professor, he had basically started teaching us the producers and assistant directors for the undergrad expert films. It's like the advanced class, CTPR 480. And we had started sitting down, working on our budgets and schedules, and I won't forget this. He just kept going over to his computer and writing up the names of every film that was nominated for Best Picture. All the people were on for Best Actor. He went all the way down the list, and then he said, "Okay, guys, Best Picture. Who's voting for 12 Years a Slave?" And that was the first time, I hope not the last, that I got to vote for the Academy Awards. And I'm just thinking, this guy's been in the industry for a long time. He's been working ever since Harry. He's been producer on a bunch of Woody Allen movies. He was the producer for Matilda. Like, how many more people are like this, where they realize that the movies that are picked, it's all going to be about who you know, who's in. I mean, you can take a look at some of the movies that got nominated this year, for instance. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but, Promising Young Woman. You have Margot Robbie, who is very loved in the Academy. You also have the director, who is in The Queen, right, on Netflix, and she wrote, directed, and starred in this movie at a time when we're not only trying to address movements like Me Too and the experience of women all over the world, but also push promising young directors. She's 35. There is an agenda for the future, and there's an agenda for what is going to market. And honestly, you put an Oscar nominee sticker at least on a DVD, you're going to increase the shelf life of that movie for at least 15 years.
Yeah, and you look at the streaming services. So you go to Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. They've all got a bar that says, here's your Oscar. They did it for Golden Globes. They're doing it for Oscars. Your Oscar-nominated films.
Yes.
And you're going to see the ones that you go to Hulu. Nomadland is there.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Netflix. Mank is there. And
well, as a consumer,
HBO and Judas.
Yeah. And as a consumer that doesn't really like being told what I should like, and often bucks against what's gets the good ratings and the nods from the critics, quote unquote. I shy away from that naturally, but then again, it's worth noting. There's something about these films that are obviously valuable.
So the next time I do a movie review, and it's a good one, you're going to stay away from that film.
Well, not if you review it. I trust you. Self. You know what I mean? It's I find that the things that sometimes I'm told to like, I don't.
Yeah.
And will kind of just I'll see what else is out there before before I follow the crowd. But there's obviously aspects to all of these films that are worth exploring, and that's why we want to bring in people like Scott. We have a couple more guests coming up. Let's see here on April 2nd, we're going to talk to UK film critic Matthew Turner. We're going to get his take from across the pond. There's some British folks involved in some of the films.
Absolutely.
And then on April 9th, Turner Classic Movies author and commentator Jeremy Arnold. He's going to give us a little bit of a history about the Oscars and talk about the old versus the new. So definitely tune in for those as well.
And Matthew's going to talk about his pre-code April challenge. So sign up for that. Watch your pre-code movies during April.
Thin Man. Thin Man number 1, the only one that was pre-code.
Exactly, right? and that's what we talked about with Matthew last time. Is you notice that the other ones are good, but they're not. A little bit.
They drink a little bit more in the first one, right?
Yeah. There's more innuendo.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I have a go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna give the audience the rundown of when the Oscars can be seen and all that.
Go ahead.
Because, well, of course, because it is gonna be in person. There will be a red carpet, like we talked about. And it's the 93rd Academy Awards, live Sunday, April 25th. They pushed it off a couple of months. And it will be held in person and broadcast on ABC as usual. So.
And the good thing about it being pushed off is we get more time to see these films.
Right.
And
I got to catch up.
And they're on. A lot of them are on streaming services. A lot of them are free on streaming services. The streaming services obviously aren't necessarily free. Some of them are on through Amazon or iTunes or whichever you have to pay maybe $20 for.
You will need HBO for this.
Yes.
Judas.
Yes. Yeah, everything Warner Brothers is releasing is going to be released simultaneously on HBO Max.
And that's another topic for another show.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, because we need to address
the
that.
end of theaters.
Yes, and we'll continue that series, and we've been talking.
Yeah, we
about
have,
that.
and it's and one more reason to if you have the opportunity to come out to a great little theater like the Roxy here in Bremerton, do it. Come out, have a drink. Get some popcorn. Sit down. It's a beautiful theater. They just they redid all the seating.
Brand new HVAC.
Yeah, it's stellar sound, and but you get that feel of a classic theater. So it's really a fun experience.
Yep.
And I'm glad we can introduce you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to come and see a new place after not being in a theater for over a year.
It feels good.
My God, it's like I'm home.
And you can go to Faraway Entertainment and get all their showtimes. Judas and the Black Messiah is playing at least through this weekend, and so just stay tuned there. Come and see it. And The Father is also playing, and that's
I believe Judas is playing through April 1st.
I believe so. He's got a few more days.
Yeah.
So.
And then you have Anthony Hopkins and Sounds of the Lambs.
Yes, and that is also coming, which we'll also be covering the 30th anniversary.
I love that movie so much. I will definitely.
Well, you need to join us. We're going to come and do a showing.
Okay.
Probably another one of these, and we'll drink a nice Chianti,
right?
Chianti,
yeah.
I think we won't have a choice by then.
Yeah, that's right. They don't
infused with liver.
That's right.
So, go ahead.
Oh no, after you, sir.
So, I want to ask you, Scott. And this is one thing that I've been wondering, and you watch the awards shows, and when you see a film that wins best cinematography, best score, best all the technical awards, or costume design, all that stuff, would you imply that it should also win best director because the best director puts all those things together?
So I actually had an interesting conversation about this. The director is definitely in charge of the vision of the film, right? And when you have a beautiful movie, it's obviously there's going to be a tip to the hat to the director. But a director is only as good as their tools sometimes. Look at 1917 last year.
Right.
That movie could have technically happened without Roger Deakins, but you have a hard time finding the way that he was able to innovate and make that film happen. I think for the most part, it also comes down to the kind of leadership. Did the director do a really great job of working with his team to build this? I mean, when Peter Jackson won the Oscar for Return of the King, that wasn't just a reward for one movie.
Yeah.
It was a reward for 4 to 6 years of development of your life, 6 years committed to just one big overarching project. So I think in the long run, again, unfortunately, it all comes down to what the campaigning is going to do. Steven Spielberg won Saving Private Ryan director honors. I think that movie also won editing, sound design, I believe. But at the end of the day, the Weinstein Company had a very dirty behind-the-doors campaign, and that's how Shakespeare in Love won.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's...
Hindsight being...
Of all people, who could it have been? There's actually a really good Vanity Fair article about that whole thing. You should definitely read it if you can find it. So yeah, does the director deserve to win? I mean, I think anybody who gets nominated definitely should usually deserve it. It's just a matter of opinion after that, and who shook whose hand and waved hello.
But to your point, with the Oscars, a lot of times, and Matt and I were talking about this on the way over here, when we were talking about best actor in a leading role.
Yeah.
We're talking about Chadwick Boseman, who probably, because of unfortunately his passing, may be a leading contender for that. But as a result of his, not just Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but the other work that he's done. A lot of times the Academy likes to award something not for a particular role that's as good. And I haven't seen Ma Rainey's Black Bottom yet, so I can't comment on the performance. However,
yes.
It seems like sometimes they will not give an award for a particular role that somebody deserves, but later on they'll get an award for a body of work that includes that.
Yes, I call that the true honorary Oscar. Peter O'Toole got nominated 7 times, I believe, never won, and he got an honorary Oscar. But that's one of the few things he never got was Best Actor after, debuting as Lawrence of Arabia.
I know,
right? It's really common. I mean, I think everybody loves seeing Leonardo DiCaprio literally eat a buffalo heart, but I mean, is that going to be the reason why you give this guy Best Actor? No, it's all the things he's done from Gilbert Grape to R&J and iconic movies like Titanic, and honestly a really great streak with Martin Scorsese. Like all those movies in the 2000s, early 2010s, that's him.
Departed.
Yeah,
My
exactly. That's a wonderful.
Well, you could
wonderful
also make the argument for Anthony Hopkins, though.
Yeah.
A guy who hasn't won a lot of Oscars, but has been around a long time and has made some excellent films.
Yeah.
And is arguably one of the, one of the what's the word? Not forefathers, but he's now a household name. He's been around for so long. And
he's definitely a grandfather.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Grandfather,
acting.
right?
or do you look at somebody from and the name escapes me, the lead actor of Minari, who I thought was phenomenal, but he doesn't have that body of work.
Michael Caine was nominated over 5 decades.
Yeah.
The guy has 2 Oscars. One, I think they're both supporting, aren't they? There's
I think so.
Cider House Rules and that other guy. I can't remember what it is. But how many movies has he been a lead in?
Yeah.
He's considered an icon of British film.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Icon.
And this just proves the point that the Oscars are just, they're the Oscars. It's another bit of entertainment.
Yeah.
It's nothing to, hang anybody's hat on, though it does help.
But it is fun.
Yeah.
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 It's fun.
So watch our social media, watch Twitter, watch Facebook, and we'll have some of our picks and some of our predictions. Make sure to tune in coming up in April for some of our other cinematic experts, along with Scott. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And tune in this week and hear our interview with Danielle Barnum, Seattle photographer, headshot and branding aficionado, with some great tips for how to improve your portfolio as an actor.
Yeah. And head out to the Roxy. Grab a glass of wine, a beer, and enjoy a fantastic film.
And be sure to see Nomadland. It's the best movie of the year. Finally got that in.
Oh!